Hello, everyone. My name is Mirna, and on behalf of the Mindalia TV team, welcome to Mindalia live streaming, where thousands of people around the world gather daily to see the lectures and interviews organized by Mindalia TV. Today, with us, Angel Ribo, CEO consultant, TV host, international public speaker, and president of the Wisdom for Kids Foundation, is being joined by our dear co host, Judy Hoberman. Judy is the president of the Walking on a Glass Floor and Selling in a Skirt. She is an international speaker, trainer, executive coach, author, and radio show host. Before starting with them, we want to remind you that Mindalia's mission is to share information that can help raise the level of consciousness around the world, and you can help us by subscribing to our channel, leaving us a positive comment down this video, or sharing it with someone that you know that is gonna benefit of the content that we're gonna be talking here today. Also, while we are live streaming, like right now, we have the active chat, the screen that you're going to be seeing here on my side or under the video in case that you're seeing us from a smartphone. And through there, you can interact with us, enter your questions. We just please ask you to follow the format, word question in caps before the actual question in relation with the conference, of course, that we're having today. We also want you to collaborate with Mindalia with your own valuable content. And for that, you can go to our website. On the top, you're going to find a link that says Collaborate with Mindalia. That link is going to take you to a form that you can fill out, and our technical team will be getting in contact with you. How can you collaborate with Mindalia? We have 3 different languages, 3 different platforms. English through Mindalia TV English, as you already know. Portuguese through Mindalia Televisao, and Spanish through Mindalia Televisión. We want you to visit our different channels, to follow our Instagram accounts and our Facebook pages. In that way, you help us reach as much people as possible, and you also are updated with the content that is being shared daily. We're not going to delay this any further, and I'm going to be leaving you with Angel, with Judy, and a very special guest that we're going to be having today. Guys, welcome to Mindalia live streaming. The screen is yours.
Thank you, Mirna, for this wonderful introduction. And welcome back, Judy. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm pumped.
Always pumped. Always pumped. This is so exciting in the morning, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I still remember. Let me share a little bit of an anecdote here. When I said pumped, I started using pumped because when I moved from Barcelona to the UK to work for my first American company ever, my direct boss was actually a former Navy guy, and the first thing he would ask me every single morning when he would come at my office was, "Are you fired up, Angel? Are you fired up?" And I would say, "I am fired up."
So you're fired up?
I am fired up. And the funny thing, I've used this term in the US, extensively, and a lot of times people look at me and say, "What?" So I guess it's good for a Navy guy or for a military guy, but to say I'm fired up, I mean, for everybody in every situation, it doesn't always work. But anyway, I'm always high in energy, as you know, and you are too, and that's why we always also attract these amazing guests to our show.
Absolutely. So should we talk about who's coming on now?
Oh, please.
So today we have Jim Bouchard, and Jim Bouchard is a leadership activist, a speaker, an author, and he's the founder of the SENSEI LEADER Movement. And he's a friend of mine. I've known him for years, and I finally got to meet him a few years ago in person, and it was like, you can't even imagine the fireworks between he and I and his wife, Alex. So I wanted to find out exactly what he talks about. And so this is what he says on LinkedIn. He said, "It's no longer enough to train managers. For your organization to survive and thrive into the future, it's time to train authentic leaders, leaders with emotional intelligence, strong interpersonal skills, courage, compassion, and wisdom." And so he talks about the SENSEI leader, and I know we're going to get into a lot of that, but he really is somebody that gives of himself. He's very authentic, and he doesn't have to say, "Hey, I'm authentic," because he truly is. So we're excited to have you, Jim.
I'm thrilled to be here too. And Angel, it's great
I think we're muted.
You can be pumped up
for some reason.
Oh,
there you go.
Now, okay, now, awesome.
There it is.
Yeah.
Well, Angel, all I was saying, it's fine to be pumped up around martial arts guys too. So that's a good way to start, right? We never start a martial arts class by saying, "Okay, are you ready now?" There you go.
It's so true. It's so true. I guess it's part of the authenticity, right? You are who you are.
That's an interesting word that gets tossed around now too, doesn't it? And I found that when someone has to actually say they're authentic, you better be careful. They're probably not, huh?
Yeah. Right. They're convincing themselves, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I enjoy it when, you know, and I really appreciate when other people recognize me as that. And I just hope I can live up to it. That's all. So, yeah.
Well, I know you can. So I'm good with that. I have no problem. No, seriously. I mean, you know, there's so many people that we bring onto the show that are truly authentic people and don't have to announce it, because you shouldn't have to announce that you're authentic. And yet when you look on social media, people say, oh, I'm so authentic. I have high integrity and all of that. And it's just bizarro. So Angel, how do you want to start with Jim? Because he's got lots to talk about.
No, I know he has, but I would really like to start with the authenticity part, because, as you know, we talk every single week about, you know, the importance of diversity, of inclusion, of making sure that, you know, women at corporations have the right opportunities. And I think that there's a lot of men. I mean, obviously, me included, right? When I was in corporate, that I think that maybe sometimes we are obliged by the, you know, internal policies, by the culture, not to be authentic. I mean, and you know, I mean, it comes just right now. Two very special moments come. I mean, unfortunate moments come to my mind. It was that when my boss called me a couple of times and told me, "Hey, we have to get rid of these two guys that report to you, and you have to do it." You know, I mean, I'm not. I mean, honestly, it's probably the top two regrets in my entire life was that, you know, that I had to do things against my will, against my principles and my values, you know, and probably I should have stood up, and whatever the consequences were, maybe that person should have done that. But, you know, why do you think that's the case so often today? And I would even say there's a lot of people that naturally would champion women in organizations, and they are scared of doing it. What do you think?
Well, you know, it's interesting you bring that up, and you opened a lot of layers there. But I get in trouble for talking about courage sometimes, and I think, Judy, I think I related this story to you about a year ago. I guess it was. I was speaking at a college actually, which was promoted as a very forward-thinking university. You know, I was cautioned that these kids were the best and the brightest, not to talk down to them. And we got onto the topic of sexual harassment. The NBC situation had just happened with Matt Lauer. And they asked me, you know, what's your response to that? How do you handle that? And I said, well, really, I said, from my perspective, because, you know, I don't do technical management. I said, I'm coming at this from a leadership perspective, from a human-centric perspective. And I said, the issue behind all of that is courage, you know. And Judy, I have to say, you know, that's one of the, so people understand our connection, that's one of the reasons I have so much respect for you, that you know, you don't ask men not to be men. You know, you show how men and women both have strengths and weaknesses that can work right in synergy together to make a greater whole. Well, anyway, when I brought up the idea of courage, and the kids really got it. I have to credit them. It was the faculty that I triggered. I got them very upset because they thought when I was talking about courage, that we have to have the courage to face our perpetrators, right? People who are doing us harm or trying to do us harm. As leaders, we have to have the courage to face a situation like that, even when it's not profitable or expedient, right? And that's the case. You know, we can. That case was really interesting to watch because as it came out, pretty much we saw that this had been going on for about 12 years, and the kids were asking why. I said, well, because the guy was making money for that organization, right? And people didn't have the courage to face him down and take that loss. So there's a lot of different factors at work there, but the answer is courage. And to me, that's why we have to encourage people to come forward. Now, it's not easy. Where I got in trouble was they informed me that there were two young women in the audience who had been victims of sexual assault. Now, we weren't talking about sexual assault, Mark. We were talking about sexual harassment. It hadn't reached that level yet. But they were afraid that I was victim blaming, that I was shaming them somehow because they did not want to talk about it. They didn't want to bring it forward. Now, we can go into any number of areas, you know, as far as that goes, because, you know, therapists will say the best way for us to heal from a situation like that, right, is to face that issue. And that takes courage. That takes a lot of courage. But I do understand why somebody would want to take it and keep it private. That's their business. I'm not judging them. But that doesn't change what the solution is. The solution is to act courageously. Now, it's not easy. And the fact that I had caused that trouble is indicative, Angel, of what you just talked about, right? These are difficult decisions, and there are a lot of factors at play. One of the factors at play is at what level is this bad behavior, right? And how much do you want to damage other people's lives, and can you salvage these people? So it's not an easy decision. And when people it's hard because I understand, I can feel it. You're living with a regret there. And I've had many situations like that in my life as well. The best we can do is learn from it and move along, right? And hopefully do something a little bit differently there. But the answer, definitely, I agree with you, is courage. And that's a complicated issue. We spend a lot of time in workshops working on just that.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of times when this topic is brought up, and it's not always brought up in leadership, but it's like that elephant in the room. Yeah. People will say to me, as a woman, why do you think that women waited decades to say anything? And, and you have to also, it goes right back to your courage again. There's underlying factors that people don't know. The person could have been very powerful. The person could have threatened them. The person could have threatened their families. Or you just didn't have, you weren't mature enough or experienced enough to know how to even get that out. So I do agree that courage plays a big portion in leadership, and yet a lot of people think it's not a leadership trait, courage. And I have to disagree. Yeah. I'm sure the two of you also disagree.
That amazes me. Our top three: courage, compassion, and wisdom. And yes, absolutely. And that's the point exactly, because the situation you described, there are people in these situations that don't have the social capital yet. They don't have the power in the organization to be able to make a stand, without support, or at least they made that decision to. I'd still say, in talking with individuals, sometimes the best decision is to have the courage to walk away, but that's another issue. You have to play that, one by one. But leaders certainly have to have that courage to be able to stand up to it, because people trust in your leadership, right? People trust, right? So, you don't know, as a leader, I'm sorry, I'm hardcore. Judy, you knew that when you invited me here. But leaders, you don't have that option. You can't back away from that, or don't call yourself a leader, because you're not. If you don't have courage, you are not a leader.
So here's a question for both of you, because you're the male portion and I'm the female portion. It's just always a great discussion. But as a female who needs men to champion them, do you find that you have to, because leaders have to make decisions that are not always popular. So as men, male leaders, do you find that sometimes you have to step in and make these decisions to be the support system, to be the champion for women, so that they can stay where they are instead of being forced out because they're embarrassed or because they become the victim? And I know that the both of you are the champions of women. I know you are.
I just wouldn't limit that to women. There are people in your organization, right? And I know societally we still are facing a lot of we need to make a lot of change in regard to how we work with women, right? Especially as women are gaining more and more leadership positions. And I've noticed that too, when we do workshops for C-suite folks, right? Women in leadership positions are facing that same dilemma, right? And whether they're backing other women or whether they're backing men that come to them. And I guess, I don't know, Angel, I'd like to hear your perspective on it, because I also, when I was younger, ironically, and one of my dearest friends to this day is a woman who was one of the first women who was a television director in the United States when I was working in television, a remarkable person. And I worked in an organization where most of the leadership, at least at that level, was women. So it was a different dynamic.
Yeah, no, I mean, my position has been, I have been blessed with always having the option to choose between men and women when I have had to bring someone else to my team, and I have to say that I have always been working very well with women consistently, probably because I value I value what they bring to the table. I value that they balance, my leadership style and what they bring to the teams that I was building every single time. But I agree with you. It's not only a matter of men and women. It's an entire leadership thing, and your leadership style. And I think that when you are in a position of leadership and you want to make your a particular point because something is needed in the organization, you have to go to the courage. Again, you have to go to this courage position in which no matter what, you have to say, so this is who I am. And I'm going to take this, this decision, no matter what the consequences are. And if I went to, to discuss with the C-level executives of my company, the problem is that there was never a woman in the equation. Never ever. It was really, really, really strange. And I remember that for a couple of years we had like one of the senior vice presidents of the company was a woman, and she had a very specific profile, and she didn't last long, unfortunately. So again, you have to be strong. You have to hold your position, but based on your values and the principles you are defending. I think that, you know, no matter what you do when you're in a leadership position, everything is part of your leadership style, no matter what you do, and in any circumstances. And you have to just be consistent. That's why, again, I mean, for me, authenticity is a very important word because, you know, just be yourself. You know, don't pretend to be anybody else. Just be yourself, and it doesn't have to. You don't have to be perfect. You know, I would add, you know, I don't know if you mentioned compassion in those three C's, because compassion and acceptance is actually, oh my God, you know, judging. We are all the time judging, right? That's why compassion is also at the same time so important. But that has to come. But I mean, how many, when you talk to these C-suite leaders, I'm not sure compassion is in the equation either.
Oh, you know, I have to say, yes, it is more often than not. And that's very interesting because, you know, there's this picture, and, you know, I also don't want to lose sight. You opened up another can of worms there, and I want to get back to your generational issue too. But, this is fun. Yeah, what a lot of people, I think, don't understand, you know, what do leaders want? We approach that a lot too. You know, what do leaders really want? And leaders want the trust, the loyalty, and the respect of the people they serve, you know. And I can tell you overwhelmingly, there's notable exceptions. And believe me, I've been in the room with people where, you know, I'm just going to clash with this person because they don't embrace the values that I do. And compassion is a big one. Or probably more often, I run into people who, like we talked about with authenticity, they believe themselves compassionate, right? But are not displaying authentic compassion on any level. They're still very self-serving. You know, self-interested we all are, but very self-serving. And so most of the time when I'm working with people in the C-suite, I see people that really do want to be compassionate. Sometimes they get, how's the best way to say this? This is one of the things that can get lost to the technical aspects of management, right? Now, management's important. Don't get me wrong. It's equally important when you're running a business. What's it? Admiral Grace Hopper, ironically, one of the first women who was an admiral in the United States Navy. She said this wonderful thing a few years ago. She said, management is about things, leadership is about people. For too long, we went overboard on management and forgot about leadership. That's exactly what we're talking about. And compassion is not taught in management classes very often, right? That's a leadership theme, and we need to get back to it. But I can tell you, yes, most of the C-suite folks that we work with, companies all different sizes, they truly do want to be compassionate. They're caring people, and they want people to care about them. They want to be appreciated, you know, for their work. And we see that a lot of times where, you know, a leader who's also in a management position, and that's the designation that I make, differentiation. You know, when you ask them, what do you really care about? Well, sometimes their biggest gripe is, you know, I'm working so hard for these people, and they don't even appreciate, they don't even see it, you see? And so that folds out to a communication issue, right, Judy? But I don't want to lose that sight of, it's not just gender issue anymore. It's a generational issue. And we're in a very precarious situation. Jonathan Haidt he and Greg Lukianoff, I think, wrote this great book, The Coddling of the American Mind. Now, they were researching why do we have so much trouble on college campuses right now with iGen, right? That they're having all these riots and protests over free speech or trying to ban speakers and wanting these safe spaces and protected spaces and all this. And they have a very interesting study. And the reason I got interested in it is this. Remember, the oldest iGen people are about 20 to 24 years old now. They're hitting the workplace. You know what I mean? The youngest are about 7 or 8 years old. So we're going to be dealing with this generation for a while. And we better wake up and we better understand that we have, to a large extent, hampered a generation by encouraging weakness in a lot of areas, by, you know, teaching them that the first thing they need to do when they get in trouble is to turn to an authority figure, to have a bureaucracy settle their issues for them. And that's why they're struggling early and dangerously in the workplace, right? And why organizations are saying, what do we do now? How do, you know, well, we better help these people find courage. We better help these people deal with uncertainty and to be able to self-manage. Because not only self-management, these are the people who in the next 5 and 10 years are going to become the leaders in our organizations, right?
Right, right. So do you think that there's a study after study after study that comes out that talks about the importance of the soft skills as opposed to let's only talk about the hard skills? The hard skills are the technical skills. And if you're doing anything where you need technical skills, you have to have that. But more people that are recruiters and more people that are in leadership positions are looking for those people that have the compassion, that have the authenticity, that have the softer skills. And, you know, for me, I always say that, you know, people think soft skills, they think female. Not true. Not true at all. And yet when I do, like, I've spoken to universities, and the young men in the universities will come up to me and say, why hasn't anybody talked to us about this?
That's why our condemnation culture is crippling us so badly, isn't it? That people go to the extremes so easily right now. You know, all men are fill in the blank. All women are fill in the blank. All iGen is fill in the blank. Well, you know, these tendencies and generalizations they're interesting and they're somewhat useful. They can be informative, but we can never, it's ignorance to judge any individual by the group, by the tendencies of the group, right? And we still tend to do that. No pun intended there. But when you talk about soft skills, I get so angry about that. There's a direct parallel. Everything I do is, you know, a parallel from my martial arts life to leadership. In martial arts, I have to say, spirit of full disclosure for people who aren't familiar with it, contemporary martial arts practice is much more about leadership than it is about the physicality of it. So it's a very interesting thing. It was an easy transition, let's say that. Anyway, soft skills, there's a designation in the martial arts as well. There's soft arts and hard arts. Soft arts would be like Tai Chi and Aikido, hard arts, karate, you know, Taekwondo, things like that. And it's a foolish comparison. And I've argued that for years. Because the key is, and I was blessed to have just wonderful instructors, Dr. Yang Ming, one of the most influential in my life. And he said the best arts are hard soft. You take what's powerful from each and you bring it together, right? So this outrage culture, and I say this condemnation culture, is really creating distance where we need more understanding, right, and cooperation. It's about taking the best parts of anyone else. I don't care what incidental differences there are, whether it's male, female, black, white, old, young, you know, religion, geography, ethnicity, whatever, you know. There are differences. We have to understand, are these differences incidental or are they substantive? And most of them are incidental. It doesn't matter in most cases whether we're a man or a woman to do a particular job, where we come from, what our religious belief. It doesn't matter. So as we start to understand and reconcile these things, then we want to borrow from people, right? We want to take the best in others. And hopefully we want to recognize the worst in ourselves and try to eradicate that. Now, the other clash with that is we're trying to borrow the best from people, we can be accused of appropriation, right? Isn't that a silly concept these days? So, you know, I don't know. It's a complex problem. But Judy, you hit it right on the head. The management is critically important. But one thing in leadership we need to understand, and more people need to come around to this idea, and it's very, very well documented. The higher up you go in the hierarchy of an organization, the less important technical skills are, and the more important these so-called soft skills. But again, just like with the martial arts, soft, man, those are the most powerful skills, right? I hate the designation of soft. They're the most essential skills. And let's really bring it to a head here. You know, when people ignore the human aspects of leadership and the human aspects of the relationships in an organization, man, you're in big trouble. Who's making all these systems and processes work? All business at some point, right, is really just a relationship between people. That's all it is. And if we don't take care of the human aspect of it, we're in serious. And some organizations have found that, haven't they?
Yeah, and they're no longer in business either.
or they're dying rapidly.
That's right. Yeah.
Or paying big fines. I've seen a few of those cases now.
Yeah.
So when you start talking to an organization, Jim, what's the starting point? How do you start, you know, assessing what's really going on and how you can really help them?
He comes in with his martial arts.
Almost.
Oh, he brings his outfit, his judo outfit.
Right, there we go. Yeah, you get people punching each other and understandings happen very quickly.
Yeah, really.
No, it's funny because I'm not a problem solver. That's why I don't identify myself that way. I'm more of a troublemaker. I do guide people through, you know, specific strategies and tactics that can help them be better, more human-centric leaders, and then challenge them. Really, my job is to challenge them to create what we call disciplines. If you want to call them action steps, that's fine. But one of the first things I say is you're not leaving this room without some items carved into your calendar that you're going to do. And I mean it, the calendar, not a to-do list. To-do list is a wish list. It has to be carved into your calendar. I'm going to do this, right? To be more compassionate, to be more courageous, to increase my wisdom potential. And then we get on to a lot of other things, to earn the trust, loyalty, and respect of the people I serve. Now, these can be really esoteric topics, right? So, I think what makes our program very special and very effective is just that we take these philosophical concepts and say, no, enough. It's nice to talk philosophy. I love to do it. I would do it all day long. But we've got to make it real. You've got to have something that you're going to decide that you're going to do, that you can do, and that you will do. And what I mean by can do, we also challenge people come up with all these grandiose ideas, especially with compassion. How are we going to do it? Okay, do you have the resources to do that? Can you implement that? Let's look at the hard side of it and make sure it's not just something you will do, but it's something you actually can do. So anyway, back to your first question, the first thing I usually do is stand up in front of people and say, there are only two types of people in the world, leaders and people who refuse to be. And part of what I'm here to do is to provoke some thinking so that you come out of here deciding you either are a leader, you're going to be a leader, and if you are an authentic leader, that you're going to be a better one, because that's the best. That's the biggest thing about leadership is you should have, from borrowing from martial arts again, that master's mindset, which is really what we call beginner's mind, that we're always going to learn, grow, and develop, that we're never going to be happy, but not satisfied with where we are. We want to learn, grow, and develop and become better leaders always. And to me, that's the biggest mark of an authentic leader. I can identify an authentic leader by someone who's telling me what they're learning, what they hope to learn, what they hope to accomplish, rather than someone who gives me the tour and tells me how great they are. And right, Judy, we run into those people out there, right?
All the time. Mm-hmm. And they're all over social media,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, totally. Yeah.
So when you have had that conversation, do you actually suggest specific activities that they can start, or initiatives, or is that something that you try to coach them, or how do you work? How do you exactly do that?
Both. We have to start somewhere. We have sets of strategies that we've developed and borrowed that apply to various levels. We've really narrowed it down to 3 levels of leadership: emerging and aspiring leaders, because they have a little bit different needs, right? As they're trying to establish themselves. Then leaders at all levels. That's our SENSEI leader strategies, or our effective leader strategies, because everybody can benefit from these. And then there's another unique set that applies to the C-suite, right? Because executive management is different, no matter how we try to slice it. There is an us and them component to it. And we have to recognize and respect that and help people in that position bridge that gap. But yes, we do have those. But I'll tell you, the workshops that I feel the best about, where we bring the most value to an organization, is where the people there did the most work, and I was just provoking them. Right? And sometimes I have to really, because I get excited, like you said, I get pumped up, I get excited, and I want to just tell people things sometimes. But then nope, wait a minute, they're going to have a better idea. I don't want to spoil the moment. Shut up, Jim. let's see what happens, and so that to me, that's a lot of fun. I know not everybody's comfortable working that way, but to me, that's where I get my biggest thrill, is when a room gets boiling, right? People start throwing ideas around and challenge each other and steal ideas from each other. And that's what we've learned as martial artists. I think it was Master Liang, great martial arts master. They wrote a book about him, and they called it Steal My Art. And I think that's just such a great template for leadership, right? Everything's there. There's nothing new under the sun. For God's sake, this is not rocket surgery. It's not new. A lot of what I share is from Lao Tzu from 2,000 years ago. This is right. There's nothing new under the sun. But it is still very difficult to get people to recognize these strengths and weaknesses in themselves and to practice the fundamentals, right? When we talk, for instance, I have an immense amount of respect for Daniel Goleman and, the gentleman who coined the term emotional intelligence and everything that goes along with his research and whatnot. But sometimes when I read that's how I lost my hair. I'm pulling out my hair and I'm saying, for God's sake, Lao Tzu, 2,000 years ago, one of my favorite expressions in leadership: when the people are not in awe of your majesty, then great majesty has been achieved, right? Just yesterday, I saw an article that just came up in Harvard Business Review, right? And what did they identify as one of the most important traits in leadership? Humility. Duh. Right. So, Angel, I will say this, sometimes in the middle, it's not usually the beginning, but it's usually in the middle of a presentation or workshop, I will exactly do that. And I said, everything we're talking about is stupid. You know, we should know this. But now let's talk about how we're going to do it and how we're going to practice it every day. And that's really what's at stake here. This is discipline. It's practice. It's simple. It's not easy.
Yeah, but sometimes you have to go back to the basics, and you have to go back to the stuff that, you know, like, here it is, 1 + 1 = 2. Let's forget about the new math. Let's forget about all this nonsense. Let's talk about the basics. And with leadership, it's no different. It's no different.
Well, look at what we started with today, right? We talked about courage. There's no more simple concept in life than courage. It's the simplest thing to understand. It's one of the hardest things to do. It's one of the hardest things to practice. And when I always ask people for definitions of these words, you throw out, what does courage mean? And I'm talking, you know, you can throw that out in a meeting with academic leadership experts, and you're going to see, right? We don't think about it on a deep level every day, right? We don't think about what it means in our personal lives every day. And that's my point exactly. We have to get to the fundamentals. And Angel, that's probably a better answer to your question. What's my job? To point people at those fundamentals and to do it. There are people much smarter than me that are able to take people the rest of the way. And we're talking to one of them right here. You know, Judy ran a big company. She's been in the C-suite. She knows what she's talking about. So she knows how to you know, practice that synergy between the management and the leadership part. Okay? I haven't had that experience. So I would defer, you know, and say, hey, when you need to take it the rest of the way, you call my friend Judy and she's going to take you there. If you want to work with me, that's all we're working on is the basics, the fundamentals. But I do believe with all my heart that, yes, we can't accomplish anything else without it. So,
and you know, here's another interesting thing. You know, like, if you asked everybody to give you the definition of whatever that is, you're going to get different things. When I did a telesummit, and it was about a book that we all wrote together. It was called Pure Wealth. And I asked everybody one question only. What does pure wealth mean to you? And it was the most interesting thing, because there were 26 people and there were 26 different things. Now, some overlapped, but really that's the same thing. So what's your definition of leadership? What's your definition of courage? What's your definition of compassion? And sometimes that's where the whole conversation starts. And that's where you can start, you know, talking about, okay, so why does it mean less to you? Or what does that look like? And that's what happens.
Who was it that just not too long ago said, and this is a great way to look at the definition of leadership, because you're right, it can be very nuanced, but to me, you have to get to its lowest common denominator first. Gosh, I almost want to think it was Simon Sinek who said the only thing you really need to be a leader is followers, right? And that's pretty pure. I mean, when you look at that, that's pure. Now, the rest of the discussion is, okay, now what are you going to do with that, right? And we define a genuine or an authentic leader as someone with the ability to attract willing followers, emphasis on the word willing, and the will to serve them. But again, that's a pretty simplistic way to look at it. The rest of the journey is, what are you going to do with that? Angel, you talked about, right, being true to your values and your principles. You know, what do you have in your life and in your philosophy that you're going to defend against all costs, right? Where's that line? What do you want to do? How do you want to serve people? What role, what legacy do you want to leave? People don't think about that as much anymore. We're caught in this bottom line mentality, quarterly bottom line mentality. Bottom line is important, but, you know, we have to think long term as well as short term. That's really, I think, where, you know, when you look at the great disasters in corporate leadership over the last couple of decades, isn't that what we see? You look at Enron, right? You look at, which was a terrific company. They were one of the best companies on earth. Where did they go bad? It wasn't a process issue. I'll argue that to my grave. It was a leadership issue. It was a human character issue. What's happening at Wells Fargo right now is very interesting to follow, right? What's causing that, right? Why haven't they been able to solve it yet? See, that's a leadership issue, not a management issue. So, you know, we've got to get to the core of what leadership means on a global scale. I think Sinek hit it, followers. But what are you going to do with those followers? Are you going to serve them? How are you going to serve them? Does that also work to the benefit of your community, right? The people around you, our environment at large? These are considerations that we have to make. And because we're so global now, small organizations have to ask the big questions, right? Because we all have an impact.
I was thinking, you know, here at Mindalia, we typically serve a lot of people that are, you know, looking for answers and looking for, you know, how to increase their potential. And some people are also in pain and they are suffering and they don't know what to do. And I think that, we have a lot of conversations with Judy every week with different guests about, what's happening in corporate America and in corporations, mid and large corporations in America. And you work probably in that space often. When you work with, high level executives of those companies as opposed to middle management or even, lower management of those corporations, do you see differences? Do you see that there is still a big gap between what the organization really wants to accomplish and what is happening at the top and at the bottom?
Not in good ones. No, really, right? That's one of the. Of
course.
That's one of the key characteristics of a strong organization, is that those values are well communicated, well expressed, and embodied. It's not enough for a leader just to talk the talk. You better walk the walk, right? You have to embody the principles and the values of the organization, the purpose of the organization. Because people, figure it out pretty quickly when you're not. And we're back, right, Angel? We're right back to authenticity again. Because to me, that's probably the most important aspect of authenticity. That you used the word consistent earlier. That you do what you say you're going to do, right? That you live the way you expect others to live. You model the behavior you expect from others. That's authenticity, you see. So anyway, yeah. But in bad corporations that are struggling, companies that are struggling, particularly larger ones, because the problems get exacerbated, as the communication gets more distant, that's probably one of the key issues. That there's some disconnect. The values in one part of the organization are not in alignment, or they're not communicated across silos or barriers. And so that gets to, again, I don't get too heavily into that. I'll identify a communication issue, but then I'll call in other people to say, hey, you know what? These people have a serious communication issue. Let's get you in there and solve that on a technical level too.
Yeah.
But
can I ask you a very disruptive question? Jim,
why not?
Exactly, because I think
love the challenges.
As Judy said, and excuse me, because you wanted to say something. Is it possible to change an organization from the bottom?
Oh yeah, yes. It's funny to me when people say you must change from the top, you must change from the bottom. And if you go strictly by the research, you would probably say, this is something that's come up more and more. We work a lot with middle management. And some organizations I've worked with have said, well, we really got to get you in the C-suite too. They're not ready for you yet, but you got to change from the top. And I said, no, you don't have to. Okay. Think about it. How long are those people going to be around? Okay. A lot of times those people are cycling out. If you focus on the middle, those are the people who are going to be moving to the upper levels of management next 5, but you have to think longer term, right? And at the bottom, yeah, certainly. I mean, I don't want to get into politics or anything, but our own American Revolution started at the bottom. You know what I mean? And that's a spirit that I think people have to really access from time to time. You say great things. Our civil rights movement, that wasn't a top-down process. Those were right. And we built structures, we built organizations based on that. And I've seen great companies. Now, let's look at it this way too. Sometimes there's an issue and everybody wants to change for the better. It's just that the people at the top have become kind of isolated, or they become a little myopic and they don't know. So in great companies that can change from the bottom, there is a mindset that's required, right? The leaders have to be very, very open, encouraging. And I'd say this is one of the things we really, really work on. One of the key aspects of creating a good culture and a creative culture is that leaders not only want to be receptive to input from all levels, but want to encourage it. You want to make sure that there's a process in place. So you're going there. So one of the things we covered a lot in the last couple of years, Judy, I'm sure you have too, is the, well, I'm going to say it in its worst case. People ask me to come and talk about overcoming resistance to change. Now, when I first got those requests, it was really funny because when I thought about it, I said, well, why do you want to overcome resistance to change? I said, resistance, you should welcome it. I said, that's a signal. If people are bothered by something, right, that's an important signal. How about we encourage that? But here's the thing. If you want people to embrace change, then why aren't you talking to everybody? Why aren't you talking to people at all levels of an organization? Why aren't you involving them in the process? Then the resistance is nothing but positive. And big crisis issues are solved right before they even get legs. So, that's really what it's all about. So, yeah, that requires a lot of strength, doesn't it? for leaders to, right, to be able to say, hey, you know what, you know, I may be the dumbest guy in a room. And again, research backs this. It's interesting. I mean, I have to be honest, I learned that from Lao Tzu and Confucius too. But, you know, research has now backed it up where the most intellectual, experiential, and cultural capital in any organization exists on the front lines. Not in your C-suite, not in your management team. It's the people who are doing the work that have that type of capital. So you got to respect that if you really want things to grow and change.
Well, there's a lot of untapped potential also that people are not looking at. Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I was called into a company years ago. It was a small attorney, you know, lawyers, and they had 3 partners and they had 12 attorneys. And what they brought me into was about business development, because nobody wants to do sales. They just don't. So of course it's business development, right? So the first thing I do is I go on their website and I look about their mission, vision, and company values. So the very first thing I started with was, tell me about your mission, vision, and company values. Not one person in the room had any idea what any of that was. It's on the first page of their website. The first page.
Right, and it's no accident that that's where you and I start.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Rather that, I don't want to see your financials yet. I want to,
and I don't want to see your executive team either. I want to see what you're about. And so you know, even the 3 partners didn't know it, and they wrote it. And so I said, before you could do business development, you have to know who you are, what you represent, what you are for, and what your, you know, what your deal breakers are. And the whole entire workshop that I did had nothing to do with business development, because if you don't believe what you're doing, and if you're not, you know, in the same alignment as your company, then you're not going to be successful. You can't be a leader if you're constantly battling what the core values are and what your values are, and if you have no idea, you know, what you stand for.
Amen. And I'd only say that, you know, you said it had nothing to do with business development. I would say it has
everything. Yeah.
Right? Because what are you developing if you don't have a secure handle? And I'm going to kind of cross business and philosophy a little bit, but what is a business? What is a corporation? What is an organization? It's a group of people working together for a common purpose. When did we lose sight of that? That's a fundamental definition. Because if you ask, right, again, if we were in a workshop together, Judy, and we asked people for a definition of corporation, you think that's what we'd get?
No.
No. Not first, right? We have to antagonize them a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, but I just thought that was interesting, especially with, you know, what we're all talking about is either being authentic or being compassionate or knowing who you are. You know, how can you actually be a good leader if you're not even sharing your values with your company?
By the way, we have to do some more workshops. We haven't done any together. We have to do workshops together because we would we'd really aggravate people, right?
From every direction.
But that's where the work gets done. It doesn't matter if you're in the C-suite or if you're in the martial arts dojo. I mean, that's again one of the blessings. There's so many blessings that these lives are so parallel. You know, great progress only comes with pain. You know, and I say that in the most positive sense. You know, one of the things we have to do, and this is a huge generational issue that we're facing. We've insulated at least 2 generations from pain.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And found out that was a huge mistake. You know, we have to develop through pain. We have to learn how to manage that and how to, you know, and how to expose people to it in a responsible way so that they'll learn, they'll grow, they'll develop, they'll become more courageous. They'll become more authentic. And here's another thing, Angel, that we should probably talk about when we talk about authenticity. There was where did I see this? It might have been HBR, but I don't think it was. I think it maybe Forbes. Somebody wrote a very interesting article. Can you develop authenticity? And when I read that question, I said, well, how else are you going to get it? You know what I mean? But we fall back, and this is no disrespect, but we fall back to that idea of just being yourself. There's a component of that, certainly. But who are we? What is that idea of ourself? And again, in martial arts, one of the great, and I've had so blessed with so many great teachers who are really, there were a couple, Dr. Young among them, who are really some of the world's greatest living philosophers on a very practical level. And that was the process. Discover who you are. Before you can be yourself, you have to discover who you are and understand that you can continually shape who you are, right? And as a leader, that's not just, to me, that's not just an option. It shouldn't be an option. That's a responsibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let me ask the two of you something. I know that when I go into either a company or I'm going in to do a training in a hotel or whatever, I know everybody from the lowest level to the highest level. I know every housekeeper. I know every wait staff. I know everybody. And people always say to me, like, why do you do that? Like, why is that important? I said, because everybody brings something to the table and you're going to learn something from every single person and they are going to learn from you. So do you think it's something like when you think about a company, do you think that going in as a trainer or going in as a coach or whomever, that you really should get to know everybody and get the opinion so you do have some diversity of thought? You're not just talking to the C-level, you're not just talking to HR, you're not just talking to the salespeople.
Well, I think that you just reminded me of something, which is every single morning when I drop my kids in to school, and you know, our elementary school is just across the street. One of the what is it? The guards, the guys that open the doors. The guys that open the doors and of the car so the kids can get out the car.
Geez, we didn't have that at our school.
We didn't have that either.
So at our school we have that. So besides the crossing guard, there's many volunteers, and there's teachers, there's students, and there's this guy who's the janitor, you know. And I even shake hands with this guy. And they say, "Good morning, how are you? How was that? You know, how was last night?" And one day I stood, you know, I stopped in the front of the school and I was looking at, you know, what the rest of the people was doing. And I realized for some reason I was the only one doing that. So I like to see organizations as there's two concepts I use with my clients. Number one, energy. You know, we are really, I mean, we are the addition of everybody's energy. But we are able to create so much more energy that only adding the individual energy is number one. And number two, the concept of game. Because the concept of game actually helps me a lot with the fact that everybody's interrelated. And second, and again, going back to energy, it's fun. It's fun. It's fun. And, you know, when you're playing a video game, and when you're playing a video game and you make a mistake or you're being killed or you lose power or you lose life, you know, it's still fun. You still want to be there, you know, and that's a concept that has been completely lost. So that's my answer to your question. So I think that, you know, anybody in the organization, number one, brings energy into the equation. And again, the culture for me it's a very strong manifestation of that energy. And second, we are all playing the game, and the game is the process. You know, what you call management. I like to see management as a game. You know, we're all playing the game, and we should have fun. And even if we make mistakes, don't be afraid. Again, talking about courage, don't be afraid of just keep going. Your kids are not afraid of playing Minecraft, and then there's these survival creatures that are going to bite you or whatever that is. I'm talking about obviously the most mild video game out there, but you know that's my answer. That's my answer. So definitely, I mean, I've always done that just because, you know, I think that I feel the energy of the people, and I just want to add them to the equation of my life. You know, that's it.
So it's so interesting you brought up the game thing, because one of the things that I hear from people when they draw an analogy between real life management and leadership and games, they say, well, it's not like a video game. That's a cliche now. People say it's not like a video game. You can't hit the reset button. I said, well, yes, you can.
Of course you can.
Most of the time, right? There are very few mistakes that are completely fatal. Now, granted, that possibility exists, right? We have to accept that. That's for sure. There is no courage without danger, risk, and fear, right? That's courage is defined by those things. It's our ability to face those things. But yes, you can hit the reset button. And, you know, I'll go a little, I think I'm going to build on what you just said, Angel, but here's another thing that I get in trouble for sometimes when I say how important it is to have leaders and to develop and support leaders at all levels. Now, one guy at a conference recently challenged me about that. And he said, you know, this word leadership and leader, we throw these words around too much. Too many people think. And I said, no, the problem isn't that we throw the words around too much. There's two problems. That people really don't understand the true meaning of those words, and that people don't embrace the responsibilities that go along with them. Okay,
Agreed.
so that we can say. We often put people in positions of authority who are not leaders. Now that's a problem, right? And there's a big difference between a leader and someone who occupies a position of authority. So we say leaders at all levels, Judy. Yeah, absolutely. We want everybody from the janitor to the CEO to embrace this responsibility of leadership. Like I said, you know, earlier, there are only two. I firmly believe this. You can argue with me. That's great. But I believe there are only two people in the world, two types of people, leaders and people who refuse to be. You don't have to have a position of authority to be a leader. In fact, right? And some of the best leaders in your organization not only don't have much authority, they don't want it, right? They don't want that. They're perfectly content. They're satisfied. They're happy. They're productive. They're part of your energy, as Angel said, right? Of what makes this organization work. You don't want everyone to be the CEO. It's not going to work out that way. And fortunately, when I talk about this leadership at all levels, that's what people go to. They say, well, everybody's going to be. No. Believe me, very few people, right, want the responsibility that goes along with a C-suite position, with an executive position. That takes a special type of person, a special type of mindset. No less special than that person on the front line, right, who really feels fulfilled there in that role and that contribution. So, and the other part of that is this. When you are talking about people in a position of authority, let's assume leaders, good leaders in positions of authority. What is your success measured by? It's only measured, right, by the success of other people, the people you serve, right? Especially in a big organization. You can't do all the work. You can't possibly, even in small organizations, you can't possibly do all the work. So your success, your achievement as a leader is only measured by the success of your people. Again, perfect imprint, because Sensei, and Judy, I didn't tell you the story. Somebody just recently at a conference said, oh, that Sensei thing, that's a pretty clever brand. And I said, well, it's not a brand. That's what I did for most of my life, right? I said, that's just who I am. But, I said that. We were talking about this. This is how it came up. I said, the best Sensei is measured not by students who reach your level, but by students who surpass your level. And I feel that's exactly the same thing in leadership. When you provide the resources, the materials, the encouragement, now we're going to go to our big three, the purposes of a leader. When you can inspire, empower, and guide people to their very best, then you're successful as a leader. If you can't do that, we've got work to do. And we've got work to do anyway, right? So,
well, and a great leader is somebody that actually promotes themselves right out of their position, because that's what you want to do. But the other thing is, and here's the other thing that I hear all the time when I talk about leadership, somebody who's an entrepreneur will say, well, I don't have a team, or I don't have this. And I said, you are the leader, and people are influenced by you, and people are watching you. You are a leader.
Yeah, so look in the damn mirror, right?
Right. You can be a leader of leader of yourself. So
we have to start wrapping this up, unfortunately. Maybe the last question I would like to ask Jim is, tell me more about Jim, the man. How did Jim, eventually reach the place where he is today?
Jim is not where he is today. I'll say that. Somebody challenged me at the conference recently. They said, where do you, because I think I had asked this question, so I got myself in trouble. I said, where do you see yourself in 10 or 20 years? I said, I have no idea. I said, I guarantee you this, though, it's not the same place I am now. I don't want to be the same person in 10 or 20 years that I am now. And I guess that, that's the trick. We don't have time to get into all the sordid details. Judy knows the sordid past, right? Spirit of full disclosure, I was a drug addict. I was a dropout. I had to learn how to transform myself into somebody that had value, that could bring value to other people. That's what leadership is, that constant process of transformation. So I used to think that was a pretty lousy resume for someone training leaders, and I've come to accept that, no, it's a pretty good one. Who better to talk about transformation than someone that had to learn it to survive, right? And that's where we are. And I could probably sum that up, that's probably summing up my philosophy on leadership. I think it's pretty much universally accepted now that all leadership to some degree is situational. It's also becoming more and more accepted that the best leadership is transformational, that we have to be engaged in this process of transformation as individuals, as leaders, as people, and as our organizations. Because if you're not in that process right now, you're losing, you're falling behind, you're probably dying. So hopefully if I had to sum up who I am, Angel, it's someone who's dedicated himself to help people through that process.
Yep.
And hopefully that's useful.
Awesome.
Otherwise, that whole mess was for naught.
And it's not.
Exactly. It's not the case. I can tell it's not the case. How can we find you online? Could you please tell our audience what's the best way to reach to you?
Thanks. I'm very easy to find. LinkedIn is great. Hook up with me on LinkedIn, and thesenseileader.com. So just come there or ask Judy. Judy knows.
I'll hook you up.
Okay. So first we have to find Judy as well. So Judy, what's the easiest way to find you?
Either Selling in a Skirt or Judy Hoberman. I'm everywhere on social media. I'm one of the two, and Walking on the Glass Floor. So I'm there. How about you, Angel?
You need to find Judy, by the way. I'm going to put in my endorsement. Angel, I'll endorse you too, but I don't know you yet. Now I feel comfortable endorsing you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll do the same thing. Yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn. Thank you. No, thank you. I'm very active on LinkedIn. You can find me easily on LinkedIn. You can send me an email to angel@angelribo.com. Ribo as R-I-B as in boy O. And as with my foundation, which is my life purpose, Wisdom for Kids, you can find me at wisdomforkids.today. We help underprivileged kids in Latin America become entrepreneurs using the local resources. And Judy and the entire team of the Walking on the Glass Floor actually supports this initiative and supports everything that we do in Latin America. And by the way, I'm going to be in Latin America in a couple of indigenous communities just in 10 days. So I'm extremely excited to go back to meet my kids and teach them and give them opportunities to them, to their families, and to their communities. So thank you for asking, Judy. Thank you very much. And again, thank you very, very, very much, Jim, for taking the time to be with us today. Really, what a blessing.
Thanks for the opportunity. I learned a lot from both of you. I really enjoy this type of exchange. It's really a lot of fun.
See, we told you it wasn't going to be hurtful.
And and it does sound, I'm going to put this challenge out there. It sounds like we've got, all of us, we have a lot of good work to do together.
Absolutely.
And Angel, I want to hear more about your work with kids. There's some intersections we need to talk about off to the side.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Anytime. And thank you also, Judy, again, for an incredible show. Incredible guest. We are happy that you are all well over your cold of the beginning of the year. So that's another blessing. And again, this is Angel Ribo with Mindalia TV. Thank you very much for being with us today. We are sure that you enjoyed as much as we did our conversation with Judy and with Jim today. Hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Bye.